What's up, guys? YTH, what's going on? Sco. Kicking off I'm going to drink my coffee, going to teach from my phone. It's going to be a very hipster night. Enjoy it. We are kicking off, right, Steve, a brand new series called Gang Gang. I feel like you have to say it that way. The inflection is really, really important. So turn to your neighbor and say, gang, gang. That's not, you didn't say it hard enough. Turn to your other neighbor, extra hard. Say, gang, gang. Yes. The inflection is really important. Hola, ¿cómo está? Anybody speak Spanish? Anybody? Okay. ¿Cómo está? What? Muy bien. Muy bien. Me llamo Tyler. But man, I'm super excited to kick off this series with you, and we're going to talk today for just a few minutes. And how much time do I have, Steve? That's not accurate. Give me like a ballpark figure. We can do this. All right. Buckle up. I can remember, and as you probably do when I was your age, and I would like to think it wasn't that long ago. However, every year that passes, it gets a little further and further away, but it's okay because time will come for us all. So just go ahead and make your jokes now, and you too will be further and further away. But I remember when these lights are hot and bright, both things I enjoy quite a bit. I can remember when I was your age, and I had this thought, and this was kind of this misplaced idea and belief system I had. And it really involved like just thinking that my parents had it all figured out. I can remember, having thoughts like, man, they just know what they're doing. You ever have that? Anybody just like believe your parents have it all figured out? No? Boy, I was a freak. Okay. I just had this idea that once, and it's because it was more of a personal, I think, projection. I didn't have it figured out, and I was an idiot. And I just had this idea that once I have kids, then I'll have it all figured out. I'll know I'll just know it all. Because, my parents knew it all. No matter what question I asked them, my dad would have an answer. My mom would have a little more sarcastic of an answer, but still a solid answer nonetheless. And I just, everything they said, I just was they got it figured out. Okay, so that's clearly, the line, right? Because how many of you just feel like you don't ever have it figured out? Anybody want to be honest? And the rest of you are liars. It's okay. I grew up thinking I just did not have it figured out. And once that I achieved that status of having kids, I'm you know what? That's probably the line. You just have to immediately mature enough to just know things. So when you have kids, it'll just change everything. I had this idea. I was really sold on it for a long time. And then I turned 30 and I had my first child. I didn't have her. My wife had her. Never mind. I had the great privilege of, doing my part. So anyways, my wife had our first daughter, Lucille, and I remember thinking this is it. It's gonna, any moment now, it's just gonna snap in and I'm gonna be a full-fledged adult. And I'm gonna know what it means and what I'm doing. And as it turns out, that moment never came. And I was still an idiot. I was just oh my goodness, except I was an idiot with a kid now. I was stumbling through life trying to figure it out still as I went along. And so eventually I got to the point where I'm having dinner with my parents and I just had to ask them. I'm hey, when did you guys have it all figured out? Because you guys just knew everything and you just, I really thought I was going to have a kid. That's how that happened and that didn't happen. And so my mom was oh no, we were idiots. I'm what? Tell me more. And so she began to tell me stories. And some of the stories involved leaving me as a baby at department stores and just forgetting me, which is sketchy. If I did that now, you imagine, I'd get arrested. My parents didn't get arrested. I'm grateful I never went into human trafficking. I was very grateful for that. But my parents, she told me twice, 2 or 3 times they left me at a department store, just in the carrier, just sitting down between racks. And we're hey, we forgot something. And I was so y'all didn't ever have it figured out. They were oh goodness, no. We didn't have it. They're no, we were just figuring it out as we went along. And so this idea of man, once I get to this point, and maybe you're here and you're once I get to a certain, maybe for you it's not having kids, but it's once I get into college, then I'll have a better handle on things. Or if I get a job, like a career job, like a business boy job, then I'll like have it all figured out and I'll be able to figure it out and do more of that. But I just had this idea, man. I was like, no, life is all about learning as you go, right? So much of life is not actually getting to a point where you actually do figure it out. It's where you get to a point where you realize that you don't have it figured out and you figure it out as you go along. And, now here's the thing. That doesn't mean that you and I meander through life making mistakes blindly, right? Like so often God will put people in our life to actually give us wisdom. And they will speak into your life and you may ignore them like I ignored them, right? I had people speak into my life, hey, avoid this. Hey, think about this. Hey, just learn from my mistakes. But God puts wisdom and God puts people in our life for us to learn from. Because you and I, after all, we're just figuring this out as we go along. Life is all about figuring it out as we go along. And there's this, I love this teaching. It's on the poisonous mushroom. It really changed my life first time I heard it. Basically, someone had to be the first person to eat a poisonous mushroom, right? Like somebody had to go first and been like, all right, he's dead. So avoid that one. Someone had to go first, right? And there's usually like a lot of respect for the one that goes first, but the one that goes second and third, there's really not a lot of grace for that person. They're like, okay, he's no longer here. But that's the idea, right? So much of life is we try to figure it out as we go along, but God has put people in wisdom in our life to where we don't have to eat the poisonous mushroom second and third and fourth. We can learn from people that God has put in your life and in my life for us to learn from. And that's one of the things we're going to do in this series. We're going to look at people that walked with Jesus, talked with Jesus, did life with Jesus. Wouldn't you want to learn from them? Like, wouldn't you want to learn some of the things they went through and they did? And because so much of your life and so much of my life is learning what it means to do life and figure it out as we go along. But there is a certain level of foolishness that goes with ignoring wise counsel that God has put in your life. Because God has put leaders in your life, and you've heard them say things. And a lot of it, I won't speak to all of them, but a lot of it has come from mistakes they've made in their life. Things that they've messed up on, things that have drained joy, drained energy, drained excitement, drained just time, drained tears. And that's why they speak into your life, but you make the same mistake we all have in our life, and that's we just don't listen to them. Some things you and I do figure out as we learn and as we go along, but there are some things we get to learn from people who have been there before us, that are looking back, going, listen, if I could do things differently. So when they say things like, listen, don't get drunk every night, just don't. I know that's where culture's going. I know that's where your friends are going. I know all of those things, but that is not a healthy place for you to spend the majority of your time. And a lot of times we ignore that advice, but what we don't realize is that advice came from actual pain that people have walked through and dealt with and said, listen, it's not the best use of your energy. That is not going to project you. That is not going to rocket you to where you want to go. It will only slow you down. So when they say things like, listen, don't just go around sleeping with everybody. I know that's where culture's going. I know that's the expectation when you get into a relationship. I know all of those things, but trust me when I say that not a lot of good stuff comes from that. There's a lot of pain that comes from that. There's a lot of tears that come from that. There's a lot of anger that comes from that, but there's not a lot of good stuff that comes from that. So when people lean into your life and they go, listen, just don't make the same mistakes I did. Listen. You get to avoid so many pitfalls and so many things you get to avoid, and your life can look dramatically different than the life of people that went before you. And so we're going to look at one guy today in particular. He's part of the gang. So if I say that, you got to say it back, and with just as much hardness and enthusiasm. Okay? All right, cool. Thanks, Patrick. So gang. Doesn't it just sound cool? You just sound cool saying that. But we're going to look at one of the members of the gang. See, this can be fun if we really get into this together, guys. This can really be a thing. We're going to look at one of the disciples. And in fact, it's kind of unfortunate the disciple we're going to look at. He gets a really, really bad rap. You know him as Doubting Thomas. That's kind of an unfortunate nickname. We'll talk about that in a second. But we're going to look at this one guy's journey. And like literally, he's judged for generations to come. Imagine him being in heaven going, I did all this other stuff, but all they talk about is his one moment of doubt. He did a lot of really cool stuff. So Thomas was one of the original 12 disciples we're going to look at. And during this whole series, by the way, we're going to look at all these different disciples, these different gang. See, I told you, if you'll just get into it, it'll be cool and way less awkward. So, but we're going to look at the original 12 disciples, and Thomas, which was one of them. You know him as Doubting Thomas, but he was actually just called Thomas. They just called him Thomas. In fact, the Greek version of Thomas is a word called Didymus. Is that right? Let me double check that. Stand by. Okay. John chapter 20. Yeah, here he goes. Didymus, not Dudamus. Sorry, Dudamus is a different thing. You look that up later. That's actually really cool. Didymus, Greek. See, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just figuring this out as I go along. So this guy named Thomas, who is actually called Didymus, actually is referred to as the twin. Some people think, and these people are not very smart people, but some of people think he was actually like the twin of Jesus. By the way, there's zero evidence to think that that's true, but it's still kind of interesting. He was somebody's twin. The Bible just doesn't ever talk about who his twin was. But he was named Didymus. He was named Thomas. He was one of the original 12 disciples. They don't know if he was a fisherman or not. There's just this one story in Matthew where they talk about, the disciples went fishing and Thomas went with them. I don't know if he was just like, this sounds like fun, I can figure this out, or if that's actually what he did. But one of the cool things about Thomas is Thomas was a missionary. And in fact, they also argue, because there's so little written about Thomas in the Bible. In fact, in the New Testament, his name is only mentioned 8 times. 4 of those times is just when they list the disciples out. It's like a participation trophy. You just get in the Bible, But 4 of them are other moments, and we learn a little bit about him, not a whole lot. Siri, get out of here. You're not welcome here, Siri, in the name of Jesus. But, so one of the things we learn about Thomas is he was a missionary, and they don't quite know exactly where he went, but most historians look back and agree that Thomas, at the end of his life, was actually a missionary to what's known as modern-day Iran. There are churches that actually link their lineage all the way back to Thomas that are still active today. Imagine part of your lineage is you are known for starting churches that are still alive today, thriving today in modern-day Iran. Hello. Yet, you're known because you just had this little moment of doubt. And so we're going to talk about that moment of doubt today. And this story really comes from the book of John. And John, when I say the book of John, it's actually this guy named John who was one of the disciples, his eyewitness account of walking with Jesus. So John did life with Jesus, walked with Jesus, talked with Jesus, ate with Jesus, drank with Jesus, hung out with Jesus. And he actually wrote his account of what happened and of what it was like to do life with Jesus. And so he actually talks about Thomas in his gospel or in his eyewitness account of walking with Jesus. And so verse 24, he talks about Thomas. But I'm going to back it up a little bit before that because it's important. So verse 19, that Sunday evening, this is after the resurrection. So you don't know, Jesus died on the cross and came back alive 3 days later. This is after that, so fast forward a little bit. And that Sunday evening, the disciples were meeting behind locked doors because they were afraid of the Jewish leaders. They're not known for being fearful, but yet Thomas is known for his doubt. It's kind of interesting. Suddenly, Jesus was standing there among them. Peace be with you, he said as he spoke. He showed them the wounds in his hands and his side. They were filled with joy when they saw the Lord. And again, he said, peace be with you as the Father has sent me. So I am sending you, talking to the disciples. Fast forward a little bit. One of the 12 disciples, Thomas, nicknamed the twin, remember our old boy Didymus here, was not with the others when Jesus came. They told him, we have seen the Lord. So imagine he shows up late and they're like, boy, did you pick the wrong meeting to show up late to? Because the Lord, the resurrected Lord, was just here. And so this is how he responds. It's amazing. He replied, I won't believe it unless I see the nail wounds in his hands, put my fingers into them, and place my hand into the wound in his side. I imagine the disciples being like, that's so weird, Thomas. Why do you want to just like touch his wounds and stuff? That's kind of, that's strange. What? Why would you do that? I bet Thomas was one of those kind of friends you have that, you know what I'm saying? No one, know what I'm saying? You just have one of those kind of friends that it's just one of those. I think Thomas was probably one of those friends. Some of you are that friend. And things just got a little hashtag Ruffosaurus Rex in the room. Gang, gang. This is when I do the awkward sea turtle. You know what I'm saying? Anyways, no one knows about the awkward sea turtle. It's fine. It's only for the most sophisticated in the room. But he replied, this is Thomas, I won't believe it until I see the nail wounds in his hands, put my fingers into the wounds, place my hand into the wound in his side. Thomas, you're so weird. 8 days later, the disciples were together again, and this time Thomas was with them because Thomas is like, I'm not making that mistake again. So Thomas was like 10 minutes early to the prayer meeting, and the doors were locked again. But suddenly, as before, Jesus was standing among them. Peace be with you. He had to say that because if you're just standing in a room and some other guy just pops in without opening the door, you're probably a little frazzled. And so as they were, and so the doors were locked, Jesus pops in, says, peace be with you. Then he said to Thomas, you want to do it? You can't laugh. You don't understand humor. It's okay. It made me laugh really hard when I was like prepping this, and I was like, I'm going to say it like this, and it's going to kill, and it doesn't kill, but it's okay. I laughed really hard. Then he said to Thomas, put your finger here. Like so, do it, All right. And look at my hands. Put your hand into the wound in my side. And he says, don't be faithless any longer. Believe. My Lord and my God, Thomas exclaimed. I'm sure he did. Then Jesus told him, you believe because you have seen me. So blessed are those who believe without seeing me. You see, God wants us to learn from other people's mistakes. We're going to look at this guy named Thomas and his mistake. And you see Thomas in this moment, like he did all these amazing things. Man, helped start churches in India, helped start churches in modern day Iran. Yet the one thing Thomas has leaned into, the one thing is that he had this moment of doubt. And while we can look at that and think, oh, see, that's why, doubt discredits me. Maybe you're here and you have a lot of doubts about your faith. One of the things about doubts about your faith that may help you to understand is that while they may seem very, very personal to you, they are not unique. You're not the first person to doubt your faith. Let me just say that again. You're not the first person to have this idea like, what if it's not real? What if he's not real? What if all this is for nothing? Like, you're not the first person like this. You're some grand philosopher, like staring up at the sky going, maybe none of this is real, man. Maybe it's all a simulation. Like, maybe none of this is real. Maybe this is all just a dream of an awkward space turtle, and we're just here, right, floating around. Like, you're not the first person to have these amazing thoughts. So while your doubts feel very, very personal to you, and they should, they're not unique. Because all of us have walked through moments in our life, and this is something that dates back all the way to the disciples. Even Jesus' own disciples did not believe he was who he says he was until they saw him after the resurrection. So do not feel like this idea of like my faith, my doubts discredit my faith. Because that is what the enemy wants you to think more than anything. Is like, oh, you doubt, you can't play. Oh, you doubt, you got to go. I can't hang out with this because my doubts discredit me. But actually what we see in this moment, Jesus comes back and the first thing he does is he does not condemn Thomas. He does not go, you idiot. See, I told you. Why didn't you just believe? He doesn't do that. He looks at him and he says, listen, hey, this is what you need. Okay, here you go. You want to touch it? This is what he does. And that should encourage you. It should encourage me. And here's why it should encourage you and encourage me today. Because your doubts do not discredit you. Your doubts they are not the invitation for you to hit the off-ramp of your faith. Your doubts are actually an invitation to walk closer with the Father. Your doubts are actually an invitation to continue the journey of walking with Jesus and figuring it out as you go, as we go. Because none of us have it figured out. None of us. I mean, there's someone in the room, maybe you can let me know what it's like. I'm still learning. I'm still learning what it looks like to follow Jesus in my 30s. I'm still learning what this looks like and making mistakes and growing from your mistakes and messing up and getting back on and having doubts and understanding what it means to walk closely with Jesus. So what I do now is I bring my doubts to Jesus. I have conversations with him all the time that goes, what if this is not real? What if all this, and that's not something that has ever discredited my ministry. It's never been something that's discredited my walk with Jesus or been an invitation to hit the off-ramp. What it has been is a closer walk with Jesus, because he doesn't like, oh, nope, you're out. He says, come see. This is what you need, come see. And I still have questions I don't have the answers to. I've been following Jesus for decades, and I still have questions that I look at and go, I can't explain that. I want to know the answer to that too. But what it has encouraged me is to walk closer with the Father, spend time in his word, study his word, because what you'll find is a lot of your doubts are actually answered in the book, in God's word. If you and I will just have the patience and the drive to actually spend time there, what you'll find is a lot more answers to your questions. But the problem is a lot of times we don't want to spend time there, right? So I would encourage you that you're about to break out into small groups. So I just be vulnerable, right? I provided some great questions. I think some of them are fun. But the biggest thing I want you to walk away from is knowing, like, hey, have I ever had a doubt that I feel like has discredited my faith? I want you to walk away with like chewing on that. Like, what doubts have I had that I feel like have discredited my faith? Not that Jesus has used to discredit me in my faith, that I feel, that I believe has discredited me and my faith. And if you've ever spent time in your life and hit the off-ramp, I would encourage you to hit the on-ramp and use this as an invitation to walk closer with the Father. So before you break out into small groups, if you're here today and this is your first time and you've maybe the whole Jesus thing, you're like, what? I would love to present you the gospel. So with every owl closed, close your owls, guys. Every eye closed, every head bowed. I really, really would love, if you've never heard how much Jesus loves you, in fact, just how much Jesus loves you, you really should know that. Because the truth is, everyone in this room, from the front of the room to the back of the room to the middle of the room to the side of the room, all of us, adults, students, like all of us, we have all made mistakes in our life. And if you've ever made a mistake that has been dishonoring to God, so if you've ever lied to somebody, if you've ever cheated on something, if you've ever stolen something, if you've ever looked at something and lusted after it and said, I just want that thing or that person, like all of that is sin. And that sin actually separates you and I from God when we die. In fact, the Greek term for that word death is actually, it translates to the word eternal separation. So God's word is super clear. All of us have sinned. You've sinned. I've sinned. We've all messed up. The punishment, the payment for that sin is death, but not just any death. It's an eternal death. When you and I take our last breath, and you and I will take our last breath at some point. And when we do, all that matters is what you and I believe about God. And so you and I have sinned. That sin is a payment. The payment of that sin is death. And that would be a really awful place to like stop the story. But Father God loves you so much, that he refused to let the story end there. And in fact, he came up with this plan, this idea that was so crazy, it actually just worked. He sent his only son, Jesus, who was about 30 years old when he started his ministry. But he was 100% man, 100% God, lived 33 years, and on his 33 year, gave his life as a ransom, as a payment, as the atonement for your sin and for my sin. And he willingly laid down his life, shed his blood to cover your sins and my sins. And then he did this really crazy thing where he actually predicted his death, said this is what's going to happen, but don't worry because 3 days later I'm coming back again with the keys for your soul in hand. And then 3 days later he did just what he predicted. 3 days later he rose again, and this is where he showed up to Thomas. This is where he showed up to the disciples. This is where that part of the story is. But all who call on the Lord will find that salvation. And it's nothing that he forces. It's an ask. It's a conversation. It's something that you receive. And if you've never received that, let tonight be the day that you get that squared away, because tomorrow is not promised to you. Today is but a vapor. Tomorrow is certainly not promised. You see it all the time. People take their last breath every single day, and a lot of them had no clue it was coming. So if that's you, and you want to nail that down, and you want to accept Jesus and follow Jesus as the Lord and Savior of your life, I would love to give you that opportunity. And in just a moment, I'm going to lead you in a prayer, but I'm going to lead all of us in a prayer, because I would love for all of us to pray this out loud, because we are going to support those that are going to pray it for the very first time tonight. So if that's you and you feel God tugging at your heart, you felt it during worship, you felt it during the message, you felt it right now, like, don't ignore that. That is Father God pursuing you and pursuing your heart. And so if that's you, in just a second, I want you to repeat after me. You're not praying to me. You're not praying through me. I'm just the guy with the microphone. And so if that's you, I want you to repeat. And let's all pray this together to support those that are going to pray this for the very first time. Say, Dear Jesus, I admit I've messed up. I've made mistakes, and I'm a sinner. And I believe that you, Jesus, gave your life, shed your blood on the cross for my sin. And I believe you, Jesus, rose again 3 days later from the dead. And now I confess that you, Jesus, are Lord and Savior of my life. Come into my life. Come into my heart and teach me how to live. In Jesus' name. Ray, I'm going to kick this over to you to, or not Ray. Oh, that's awkward. What an awful time to make a mistake like that, too. It's not okay. Anyways. All right, if that was you, shift gears. Guys, be serious. Come on. I'm just joking. That was a joke. I was not really mad, I promise. If that was you and you just accepted Jesus as Lord, will you, just a second, I'm going to count to 3. And just a second, I'm going to count to 3. And if that's you, just slip your hand up. We love to do 2 things. Love to connect with you and then celebrate with you, because that decision is the best decision you have ever made or will ever make in your entire life. So if that's you right now, I count to 3. I want you to keep your hand up for like 10 seconds. Let us find you, and then we will celebrate with you. Is that good? Okay. 1, 2, 3. Awesome. Cool. Super duper cool.